This is part 1 in a series of 3 tutorial videos about the ultimate email opt-in plugin for WordPress called Bloom from Elegant Themes. Just as I did with other products of Elegant Themes like the Divi WordPress theme and social media plugin Monarch, I combined all tutorials into a few videos and made a menu, which you are looking at now, by the way, so it is easier for you to find what you are looking for. If you need to check anything on the Bloom plugin, you just look over the menu and click the link to go to that part of the tutorials. It makes it faster and easier for you to set up your plugin or adjust the settings. And you don't have to look for the pages where the original video is located. You have everything in one location. If you like what you see here, I would appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. You would also stay up to date with any upcoming tutorials from Elegant Themes if you do so. If you are not a member yet of Elegant Themes, I would appreciate it if you take the opportunity to use any of my links to subscribe. Like this, I will get a small commission, which enables me to keep making these videos. You can also click the link to the page of my website where you can find all the links you see here on the menu and more specific links even. Hope these videos are of any use to you, and if so, you can of course also give the videos a thumbs up and leave a comment or ask a question in the comment section. Usually I answer within 24 hours. I hope you enjoy the tutorials.
In this tutorial, I'm going to introduce you to Bloom. So what is Bloom? Bloom is an email opt-in plugin that places opt-in forms on your website, allowing your visitors to subscribe to your email list. Now that email list can be handled via third-party email marketing systems such as MailChimp, Aweber, Constant Contact, and so on. So Bloom is kind of the bridge between your website and those mailing list softwares. So just to give you an example of an opt-in form that Bloom might add to your site, I'm going to go over to the Bloom demo here, and on the right you see this little fly-in box. Here's an example of an opt-in form. You can add an image, add a message, people can type in their email address and subscribe right to your list. So Bloom adds these forms in different ways, whether they be a fly-in box like this, or a pop-up, or an opt-in box below your posts, or in your sidebar, in your footer, and so on. Bloom has a bunch of different opt-in types. These opt-in types can be placed on different parts of your website and can even be triggered based on different user interactions. For example, this fly-in box might only be placed on my blog, and it might only be triggered once a person finishes reading the post. So that's just one example. So I'm also going to show you a pop-up. So here's an example of another opt-in form. As a pop-up, full screen, lightbox, modal window. Okay, so there's a couple examples of what an opt-in form is, and I've explained what an opt-in form does. Now I'm going to walk you through some basic steps about how to add your first opt-in form, how to integrate it with an email marketing system, and then how to customize that form a bit. So this is going to be a very basic overview of just how Bloom works, but rest assured each of the points that I'm touching to in basic detail, I go into in-depth detail in our other tutorials. So if you need clarification on any point during the process, go back to our main documentation page and delve into one of those specific tutorials. For example, I have a specific tutorial on pop-ups, a specific tutorial on design customization, on location settings, a specific tutorial on how to set up each different account type, and so on. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do after you've installed your Bloom plugin, go to your dashboard and look for the Bloom tab here and click that. This will bring you to the main Bloom settings page. Now the home page is a list of all your active opt-ins. Well, since I haven't created any yet, there's no opt-ins to display, and you can add your first opt-in form by clicking the new opt-in button here. So I'm going to click that to add our first form. And when you click that, you're going to get a list of all the different opt-in types that Bloom supports. Now I've shown you the pop-up window, the fly-in box. Well, there's also 4 other ones, which is below post. This will place an opt-in box below your posts. Inline, this will generate a shortcode that you can use to place your opt-in box anywhere on your website just by copying and pasting that shortcode into the WordPress post editor. There's also a locked content, which just like the inline creates a shortcode, and you can use this within your posts and pages to lock specific parts of the page and require users to subscribe before they get access to that content. For example, let's say I have a web design blog and I've created this great free ebook and it's very popular. People are loving it. They're coming to my blog and downloading it. That's great. It's generating traffic. But what if I also want to have that free resource generate subscribers to my email list? Well, what I could do is simply wrap the download button in the locked content and say, subscribe to download. They'll subscribe. Once they subscribe, that locked piece of content, which is the download button, appears and they can download it. So it's like a paywall to your content, and you can lock anything you want and encourage people to subscribe. Next up is the widget. So you can generate an opt-in and it'll create a widget automatically, and you can place that widget in any widget-ready area of your site, such as your sidebar or your footer. So to start out, I'm just going to create a pop-up, which is perhaps the most effective and the most popular opt-in type. So the first screen you're going to see, which is one of 3 screens, is the setup screen. After that, you're going to move on to design settings and display settings. And at any point during the opt-in creation process, you can bounce back and forth between these 3 tabs. So during basic setup, the first thing you're going to do is name your opt-in. I'm just going to call it pop-up. This is just for your reference. When you see the opt-in in your list of opt-ins, this name is going to show up. So name it whatever you like. Let's say you've created multiple pop-ups and you have these pop-ups displaying on different aspects or different parts of your site targeted to different visitors. You might say name your pop-up more specifically. For example, let's say I was only adding this to the blog, and the blog pop-up subscribe to our RSS, RSS to email list. Well, I might name this pop-up blog or whatever. But I'm only creating one, so I'm just going to call it pop-up. Okay, the next step, once you've named your pop-up, is to connect that form to a list. So every opt-in form has to connect to a list. So when people subscribe, they get added to a specific list. And that list is housed within your email marketing software. For example, if you're using MailChimp, you might have multiple lists in your MailChimp account, and you're going to need to connect that MailChimp account to Bloom, and that'll give Bloom access to your lists, and it'll allow Bloom to subscribe people to those lists. Another popular software is Aweber. Now, Bloom supports a bunch of different account types, and we're adding more all the time. At launch, there's 12 different account types, and you can also just input a custom HTML form if your specific email marketing software is not supported. So like I said, Aweber, Constant Contact, Campaign Monitor, and so on. So let's say I wanted to use Aweber. I'm going to click Aweber, and then if I haven't integrated an account yet with Bloom, for Aweber, you're going to see this account button, add account button. I'm going to click that, and it's going to go through some steps to help Bloom authorize with Aweber, which will give us access to their API. Now, depending on the account type you've selected, there will be different authorization steps. And so we have a tutorial that goes through every single account type and how to authorize them. In most cases, you're going to have to log into your account and get an API key and then copy and paste that API key. So yeah, that's what we're going to do with Aweber. And so before connecting Aweber, you're just going to name your account. Again, this is just for your reference. So I'm just going to call it Aweber. And then you're going to go through the authorization steps. So here it says, click here to authorize. I'm going to click that. It's going to ask me to log in. So I'm going to log in and click the allow access button, and then copy and paste this code, come back over to Bloom, paste in the code, and click authorize. So that's an example of generating the API key, putting it into Bloom, and authorizing. Now Aweber knows that Bloom has been granted access, and you're going to get a list of all the different lists within your account. So within our Aweber account, we have 3 different lists, and Bloom has already pulled those in. And you can choose which list you want to connect to this form. So like I said, you might have multiple lists in your account. For example, let's say I have a web design website, I sell web design services, and I also have a blog. So we have a blog, and I want people to be able to subscribe to my blog, and that list gets added to a list that is an RSS to email list. So they get constant updates of our blog updates and so on. So I might want to, if I'm adding this to our blog, I might want to use that list. I might have a different list, like an autoresponder, that is like a more of a sales autoresponder that gets placed on our sales page. So like I said, you might have different lists for different purposes. So just choose whatever list you want to add to this form. So I'm going to choose this list. And once you've added your account, chosen your list, you can move on to the design settings. So Bloom has a ton of different design settings, and these design settings can be used to create just about anything. So to help you along, we've actually done a lot of work in creating a bunch of pre-made templates using those design settings. So instead of just making you start from scratch, we've actually created a bunch of great starting points that you can use. So these are our pre-made templates. And before you move on to the design settings, you can just choose one of these pre-made layouts to start with. So if you want to kind of start from scratch, or just start from kind of like a really basic form, we have these two rows here. It's kind of like just basic, light layout is a basic dark layout. And you can see there's different kind of orientation options here. If you want your form on the right, or if you want the form on the bottom, image top, image left, and so on. So just kind of pick a basic form that looks good to you, and you can just use that, or you can customize it after you've selected it. So I'm going to select this form here. So it's a red form, red background, dark form, centered image. Looks good to me. So I've selected that, and then I'm going to move on to customize it. Bloom comes with a ton of different design options that you can use to customize basically every part of your opt-in form. You can adjust the title and the message that appear in the form. You can adjust the image that appears, as well as change the image orientation. You can adjust the load-in animation of the image. There's basic opt-in styling, such as background color. You can choose from dozens of Google fonts for your header font and body font. You can adjust the text color, the corner style, as well as add a border. There's some basic form setup options, such as the location of the form within the opt-in box, such as on the bottom or the right. You can adjust the text that appears, the placeholder text within each field. You can adjust the button text color. There's basic form styling, such as form background color, button color, and text color. There's also an edge style, which is purely an aesthetic option. Now this separates the text content from the form content, and you can add like a zigzag edge or a little caret edge and so on. And then you can adjust the footer text. You can add footer text below the form itself, such as a disclaimer, maybe a link to your privacy settings. You can adjust the success message that appears after someone successfully subscribes to your list. And you can even add custom CSS. Now at any time during the design process, you can click this preview button here to get a glimpse at what your opt-in form looks like based on the changes you've made. Right now we see the basic pre-made template that we selected with that red background color, that image above the text, the dark form background, and some inline form fields. But let's change some of those settings just to show you what they do, and we can adjust the message. So I might add something here, such as subscribe to our newsletter to gain access to our free ebook. I might find that message works better, is more compelling. And if we preview that, you'll see that the message has been updated. Moving on to the image settings, you can adjust where the image appears. Right now it's appearing above the text, but if I wanted to change that to below the text, or to the right or the left of the text, I could do that. So I'm going to change it to below. Get a preview, it's below the text style instead of above. You can also change that image, of course, if you want to upload your own image. And you can adjust the animation as well. So right now the image is kind of sliding up as it animates in, but I could change that to a different animation, or even disable the animation altogether. So I'm going to change it to flip, and I'll show you what that looks like. You see the image kind of flips in there. Looks nice, might catch the visitor's eye a bit more, so I'm going to stick with that. Moving on to the opt-in styling, right now we have that red background color, but that can be changed, so I might change it to blue. And you can see it changes to blue. You can adjust the font. Like I said, you can choose from dozens of Google fonts. You can choose the text color. So right now I have light text because my background color is dark. But let's say I change to a light background color. Well, I probably want to change my text to dark so it shows up nicely, as you can see there. But I like that blue background color, so I'm going to go back to blue and keep my text as light. Now you can adjust the corners. You can change to rounded corners if you like. And you can also add a border. So right now I have no border, but if I wanted to add a border, you can do so. You can add a full border. You can add a border just to the top or left or right or bottom. You can add that border to any edge of your opt-in form. So sometimes it looks nice just to add it to one side, give it a little accent color depending on your branding. So maybe I wanted to accent that blue with a bit of like an orange stripe. Well, I might just add a top border of orange. That might look nice. In fact, I'm going to try that right now. So I'm going to change the top border. And then you'll see that these new border settings load in once I've selected a border. So I'm applying a border at the top, and I'm gonna choose orange as my color. And I'm gonna see what that looks like. See if I had a nice little orange stripe at the top. Looks good. I'm gonna stick with that. Oh, you can also adjust the border style. So right now we just have this basic solid color, but if you wanted to change to something else, you could. We have a dashed, a double border, inlaid border, and then this one's a little fun. This is the kind of the classic snail mail letter style, which is these stripes, and you see this pretty often. It looks nice. It's kind of fun. So actually, I'll enable that to see what that looks like. To give you a little example, you see it has that striped look at the top there. I'm going to go back to my solid edge and then continue down to the form setup. Here you can adjust the form orientation, which affects where the form appears within the box. So right now the form is appearing on the bottom, below my text and below my image, but you can change that to right or left. So if I put it on the right, you see what that looks like. It adds to the right here. The input fields get centered vertically. Looks great. You can also choose to enable the name field. So right now we just have the email field enabled, but if you want to also add a name field, you could, depending on how much information you'd like to collect from your visitors. You can adjust the text that appears in the input fields, the placeholder text. So if you want to use a different language, for example, or just change it to something else, feel free to do so. Next is the button text color, which you can do light or dark. So if you want to change the text within the button to something else, you can do that. Finally, moving on to form styling. Here you can adjust the actual form. So the form is that thing, going back to the preview, the form is this area on the right. So you can adjust the colors here independently of the whole form. So the whole box, I mean. So the whole box might have this blue background color, but the form, on the other hand, has this dark gray, and you can adjust that independently. So right now it's, like I said, set to that dark gray, and our button color is set to that little blue-green color. We can adjust those if we wanted. You know, since I added that orange highlight color on the top, I think I want to stick with that color for the button as well. I like this combination of blue and orange, and so I'm going to change that. So I've adjusted the button color, and you can see now these match. I'm liking this. It looks really good. You could adjust the form background color as well. So maybe we don't want to use gray. Maybe we want to use a darker variation of that blue we used earlier. So I'm going to just select a nice dark blue here and see what that looks like. You can see our form has been changed to blue. This is looking really good. I'm liking it. Let's move on. Next is the edge style. So this is the edge that separates that form area we were just talking about with the main text area. And there's different kind of like fun edges you can use here. So let me apply this zigzag edge as an example. You can see it kind of has a zigzag appearance on the right here. Looks pretty cool. So depending on the style of your website, you can choose between these different edge styles. This one's nice, this nice arrow edge. I like that one, so I'm going to stick with it. Next up is the footer text. This adds text below your form. Like I said, you can link to your privacy policy, or maybe add some disclaimer like we won't spam you, or unsubscribe at any time, something to give reassurance to your visitors. Next is the success message. Like I said, this appears after someone is successfully subscribed. So you could adjust this, change the language, or change the wording, and so on. And finally, custom CSS. If you're CSS savvy and you want to add even more custom styling to this form, feel free to do so right there. All right, so that concludes the design settings. And once you've finished designing your form, the next step is the display settings. And like I said, you can bounce back and forth between these at any time. So if I for whatever reason change my mind, I actually want to, change the list, I can go back to setup and or back to design and so on. But if you keep clicking next, we're going to guide you through all three sections. So let's move on to display settings. Whereas the design settings affected what your pop-in looked like, the display settings affect where and when your pop-up appears on your website. So you can have this opt-in form only appear on specific post types, such as posts or pages. Or you might have this opt-in form only appear on certain posts within certain categories of your website. Or you might have this post appear only on specific posts, or a couple, choice pages. Or you could even say, display this on all of my pages, except don't display it on these few pages, such as my contact form page, which I just think isn't a place that would be very effective for a pop-up. So you have full control over exactly where these pop-ups appear, exactly where these opt-in forms appear, and you can create as many opt-in forms as you want on your website and target them to specific areas, which means you could have specific, lists and specific offers only apply to certain visitors on certain pages, and so you have a lot of control over that, and you can really increase the conversion rate quite significantly if you tailor your pop-ups to the pages that the visitors are visiting. For example, if someone visits a post about email marketing and your pop-up happens to be offering a free ebook about email marketing, well, then someone is much more likely to subscribe to that list. So that's what these display settings are all about. It's all about having full control over where each specific opt-in form appears. But that being said, if you don't want to get too advanced, that's not a problem. If you just want to have one pop-up for your whole site that says, "Hey, subscribe to our list," it's just kind of this blanket offer. That's fine too. And that's what I'm going to do here. I'm just going to create a very basic pop-up that displays everywhere. Yeah. So those are the display settings. It affects where your pop-up appears. Well, there's also something called load-in settings, and that's what you see here. Now, these load-in settings only apply to pop-ups and fly-ins, and what these do, they don't affect where your pop-up displays. They affect when it displays on the page it has been chosen for. And when the pop-up is displayed is decided based on different user interactions that we call triggers. So you can trigger the pop-up based on a visitor interaction, and I'm going to go over each of those triggers now briefly, but we have a dedicated tutorial that talks all about triggers because I think these are really exciting, and they give you a lot of control over targeting specific visitors based on their interactions. And like I said, this is another setting you could really play with to help increase your conversion rates. So starting off with the first trigger, which is trigger after time delay. So what this does is, say you have a pop-up on a page. If you enable trigger after time delay, that pop-up is going to pop up automatically after a specific amount of seconds, which is the delay in seconds options you see here. So I have this trigger enabled. I have the delay set to 20 seconds. That means that pop-up is going to display automatically to everyone who visits that page after they've been on that page for 20 seconds. Next up is the trigger after inactivity. This will only display a pop-up after a user has become idle for a certain amount of seconds, and you can adjust the idle timeout here. So in this case, if someone's visiting your page, they get distracted, they leave, they've been gone for 15 seconds. When you come back, they'll be greeted with that pop-up, and hopefully it's enough to re-grab their attention. Next up is the trigger at bottom of the post. This is one of my favorite options because it only targets engaged users, and it never upsets the reading experience of the user because it only displays when they're done reading the post, when they've reached the bottom of your post. So this is a great, if you're creating a blog pop-up, I'd really recommend having this trigger enabled because, like I said, unlike the trigger after time delay, this could potentially pop up when they're halfway through your post and be kind of distracting. They're not very likely to subscribe, or they're less likely to subscribe when they're in the middle of reading. They're probably just going to close it, really quickly and get back to reading because, they're engaged, they want to keep reading. Well, this one, on the other hand, will only pop up after they're finished reading, so that's great. Next up is almost another layer, another level of engagement. This only affects people who have both finished reading your post and have gone on to comment on your post. That means this person is very engaged. They're very likely to subscribe because they've not only enjoyed your post, they've engaged with it personally, and they might have a vested interest in following up with that post and your future posts. So this will display a pop-up after they're finished commenting on your post. Next is the trigger after scrolling. This is much like the trigger at the bottom of the post, except it gives you specific control over at what point down the page that pop-up appears. So if you want to say, trigger after they get 50% down the page, 10% down the page, 100% down the page, this gives you full control over that. Next up is the trigger after purchasing. Now, so if someone comes to your site and you have an e-commerce website built on WooCommerce and someone purchases a WooCommerce product, this will display the pop-up after they're done purchasing. And what's so cool about this is that you can create a specific pop-up and add people to a specific list. That, let's say this is your sales funnel list or your, kind of it's integrated with your CRM system or whatever, and you have this autoresponder to try to increase customer retention with this list. So this is a very specific list only for your customers. And so you create a pop-up that says, hey, sign up to our email list and get 10% off your next purchase. Well, that's probably not a pop-up you'd want to display to everyone. It's not going to make sense to your blog readers, right? So in this case, we can display it only after they've purchased, right? So this is a great way to get customers on your list and incentivize them to sign up and to only display those offers to people who have purchased a product. Next up is the display once per session option. So this is a very important option because what it does is it prevents any pop-up from being displayed more than one time per session per visitor. So if someone's on your website and you have this pop-up that's enabled on every single post on your site, and every time someone goes to a new post, that pop-up keeps popping up, it's going to get very annoying. And so if you have the type of pop-up that's kind of like enabled on your whole website, I would highly recommend enabling this so that they only see the pop-up once, and once they close it, it's really closed. And then you can adjust the session duration as well. So say, well, someone visited my site, they close the pop-up, but I don't want to give up on that user forever, right? I still want to, if they keep coming back to my site, there's still a chance they might subscribe. So I want to change the session duration, so let's say 1 week. That means that this pop-up is going to be only displayed once per week, and you can adjust that in days to however many days you like. Finally, there's the hide on mobile option. This will simply disable the opt-in on mobile. So as an example, let's say you have a post where you have an opt-in form at the bottom of the post, you have a pop-up, and you have a fly-in. That might be okay on desktop because there's lots of real estate, lots of room, but on mobile, all those things are going to just kind of stack up on top of each other and take up the whole screen. It's going to be kind of annoying. There's really no reason to have 3 different opt-in forms on mobile. So if, let's say, this was the 3rd opt-in form you're adding to your site, you might want to hide it on mobile and just keep one enabled on mobile. Okay, so those are the load-in settings, and like I said, these will only display, or the triggers will only display on pop-ups and fly-ins. So if you're creating a below-the-post opt-in, you're not going to see these trigger settings. Next, we go on to the display settings, and like I alluded to earlier, the display settings affect where on your website your opt-in form appears. And you can get very specific with how you target where this opt-in form appears, or you can get very inspecific if you want to keep it easy. So the first thing you see here on display on is everything. If you want this pop-up to display everywhere, go for it. Just select everything. I mean, if you have a basic blog or you have a basic website where you don't need to get too crazy, it's totally fine to just display it everywhere. Especially if you have this display once per session enabled, that's great. But if you want to get more specific, you can. So let's say I want to display not on everything. In fact, this is a pop-up I only want to be displayed to my blog readers, and so I'm only going to display it on posts. So I have only just the posts enabled. Everything else is disabled, so when they come to my homepage, when they read my about page, when they go to contact me, the pop-up is not going to be displayed there. It's only going to be displayed when they go to my blog and read my posts. Moving on, you even have specific control over which categories within your post that pop-up appears. So I could deselect certain categories if I like, or just have certain pop-ups be displayed on certain categories. So like I said, you can get very specific here. Let's say you have a blog and you have lots of different topics here you talk about, right? Let's say you have a topic about email marketing, a category about email marketing. You might want to display a pop-up, and in the header talk about email marketing. It's going to be more engaging to your readers, while you might have another, category about fashion. Well, that pop-up about email marketing is not going to be very interesting to those people, to those visitors. You might want to create a new pop-up that targets that category specifically. Okay, moving on to the individual post and page targeting. So, even though I've only chosen to display on posts, you can actually still target individual pages and individual posts, and even exclude individual posts. So, if you click into here, display on pages, you can choose individual pages that you want your post to appear on, and you can even search for those pages here, and they'll pop up. Click it, and you're done. Now this pop-up is going to be displayed on this specific page only. You can also choose to disable certain posts. So right now I have this pop-up being displayed in every single post on my website and every single category on my website. But if for whatever reason I want to have this opt-in form excluded on a certain post or a certain few posts, you can go through here and select certain posts you don't want the pop-up to appear on. Finally, you can target specific posts. So let's say that I actually didn't select posts, right? I actually selected pages, and so in this case, the pop-up is only being displayed on pages and not posts. Well, you could still target individual posts if you wanted to. Like I said, you can search for these or just click on the post you want to use. And so you really do have complete control over where this pop-up appears. You can target individual posts, you can exclude individual posts, you can target individual pages and exclude individual pages. And then one step up, you can exclude or include post types, and you can include and exclude whole categories. So I'm just going to go back and say display and everything, keep it simple, and then you're done. You've gone through all 3 steps. You have chosen your list, you've set up your list, you've adjusted the design to match your website, and finally you've chosen where you want this opt-in form to display on your website. And since we're making a pop-up, we've decided when we want that pop-up to display on the specific pages that it has been chosen for. And once you've gone through all 3 steps, simply click Save and Exit, and you're done. You've created your very first opt-in. And now this will take you back to the active opt-ins page that we first started on. And when we started, we didn't have any active opt-ins, but now that we've created one, you can see it here. And you can come back to this page and manage this opt-in at any time. So if you decided you want to actually, adjust any of those settings, not a problem. Just click on the settings icon here, and you'll be taken back to that page you were just at. You can go to the design settings, you can go to the display settings, and adjust whatever you like, and then save and exit when you're done. Now, there's also some other icons here, and I'm going to talk about each of these icons briefly. So we went over the settings icon. This can be used to adjust the settings of your opt-in at any time. Next up is the delete option. So if you want to delete this opt-in, you don't want it anymore, you can delete it. And you can also duplicate it. So you've gone through all this work, designing your opt-in, making it perfect, and you want to duplicate it and create a new opt-in, but you don't want to go through all that design process again. Not a problem. Click the duplicate icon and you can duplicate that opt-in. And not only can you duplicate it, you can duplicate it into a different opt-in type, which is really great. So I just created a pop-up, but let's say I want to next create a matching fly-in. Well, I can press duplicate and then just duplicate it right into a fly-in, and you're done. So now you have two opt-ins, and they look exactly the same. They use the same design options. Everything is matching and perfect. And now that you've duplicated it, you can go in and adjust the settings some more. So now I have this duplicated fly-in. I can go in and adjust these settings if I like. And you can also change the name. So I might want to change this to fly-in. And you might want to adjust the display settings. So, you probably don't want to have a pop-up and fly-in displayed on everything. So I might just display this on my home page. Or, yeah. Okay, so yeah, now we've gone over duplication. I've just duplicated a pop-up into a fly-in. Now I have a pop-up and a fly-in opt-in. Next up is the deactivate button. This will deactivate the opt-in without deleting it, which is great, so we can save it for later. So I've created a pop-up, I've duplicated it into a fly-in. Now I have these 2 opt-in forms on my site, but I decided, you know what, I really don't want the fly-in, but I might use it in the future. I can just disable it, and it'll be added down here into the inactive opt-ins list, and they will not show up on your website. And at any point, you can reactivate those by clicking the check mark here. And finally, we have the split testing option. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here because it's deserving of its own tutorial, and in fact, we've already created a tutorial about split testing, also known as A/B testing. And so be sure to check out that split testing tutorial, and I'll go over in detail how all this works and how you can use it to really increase your conversion rates. But let me just go over what split testing is. So split testing basically is a way of creating different variations of your opt-in form and displaying those different variations to different visitors, and then collecting statistics about how each of those variations are performing, and then when you're done, choosing the most effective opt-in. So let's say you have this pop-up, which I've created, and it has this blue background color. But you know what? I want to say, well, what would happen if I changed that blue to this bright red? Would that bright red color actually be more effective because it's more eye-catching? Well, we don't have to leave that up to guessing. We can just test it. We can create a split test and have one blue opt-in and one red opt-in. Let those be shown to different visitors automatically. And then once we've had enough, data collected, we can see, the conversion rates diverge and see which one becomes more effective. So let me just show you how to do that. I'm going to click the split testing option, and then I'm going to click the add variant button. And then you can go right in and start adding your new variation. So you can give it a new name. I might call it pop-up red. And then you're going to go over to the design settings. So it's already duplicated your pop-up. It has all the same settings, and you can just go in and kind of tweak things. So I'm just going to change this to red and save. So now I have two pop-ups, my blue one, and then I have this variant, which is my pop-up red. And so I have these two different pop-ups. I'd like to see which one is better. And so I'm just going to click the start test. And then you're done. The test is running now. These two pop-ups are being displayed to different visitors, and over time you're going to see which one has the best conversion rate. And all of your stats, your conversion rate stats, are displayed right here in your active opt-ins list. So you can see how many times the pop-up has been viewed. That's the impressions. You can see how many conversions each pop-up has. That's how many people have subscribed to your list. And then finally you can see the conversion rate, which represents how effective that pop-up is, how many conversions have been made based on how many impressions have been made. And that's really the stat you want to pay attention of. The one that has the highest conversion rate, that's the one you want to use. And at any time you can pause this test if you like, and that'll stop it. The variants won't be shown, just the main one will be shown. And you can re-enable it. And when you're all done, you can click end and pick the winner, pick whichever one has the highest conversion rate. And so that's the basic overview of split testing. But you can do so much more than just change the color, right? You can change the way the pop-up is being triggered. So you can say, well, I have these two pop-ups. One is being displayed at the bottom of the post, and one is being displayed automatically after 5 seconds. We can see, well, which one is actually more effective? We don't have to leave this up to guessing. We can just test it and see. And you might find that that pop-up at the bottom of the post is more effective because it's only hitting the most engaged users, whereas the pop-up that's being displayed automatically is actually annoying your most engaged users. But, I don't know the answer. It really depends on your visitors, and so you should just test it. And that's what split testing is. Okay, so that goes over how to create an opt-in, how to manage that opt-in within your active opt-ins tab. And so the next thing I'm going to do is go over these other areas of the dashboard here. So that's our active opt-ins tab. Next over is the import and export tab. So this is an easy way to simply import and export your opt-ins that you've created from and to different websites. So if you spent a lot of time on your website, you've created this great opt-in system and all these different opt-ins, and they're working really well, and then you go to create a new website, you don't want to start from scratch, no problem. Just export your opt-ins here, log into your new website, install Bloom, and then import them. You're done. It's easy. Next is the Accounts tab. So do you remember when we first made that opt-in? During that first step, we added an Aweber account. Well, you can see now that I added that account, it appears in my Accounts tab here, along with all the different other accounts I've added. In fact, I've added every single account here, so you can see them all and link them with our test lists. So you can also add new accounts right from this menu. So if you don't want to do it during the opt-in creation process, you can come here and you can manage all your lists. So this Aweber account that I just added, you can go in here and modify the authorization code. You can trash it, get rid of it. Yeah, and you can also see the status of each one. So this green check mark means that you've successfully linked it. You've successfully authorized that account. It's all good to go, and Bloom now has access to add lists to it. So just as an example, I'm going to trash this Aweber list and start over. So I'm going to add this account all over again. So I'm going to come in here. It's going to look just like it did when we created our opt-in and we added that account originally, but it's just we can now do it through this accounts tab instead at any time. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to create new opt-in just to add a new account. That would be silly. So if you want to add a new account without, making a new opt-in, then you go to the accounts tab here. So I'm going to click on the Aweber account type. Once again, I'm going to name it Aweber account. I'm going to follow the instructions here, click to generate my authorization code. I'm going to click the allow access button and copy and paste that API key and authorize. Well, before I do that, I'm going to show you what happens if you authorize incorrectly. So I'm actually going to use the wrong code here. Well, since I used the wrong code, it's going to say authorization failed. Okay, that's no good. And if I save and exit right now, you're going to see that that check mark is actually gone. You get a little red circle here. That means this account has not been successfully authorized. It's not going to work in your list. You have to follow the instructions correctly and input the correct API key. And like I said, we have a whole tutorial on this that goes through the correct steps to take for every single opt-in, for every single account type. Usually it's pretty easy. Usually all you have to do is log into your account, copy and paste the API key, and you're done. But like I said, if you input the wrong API key, it's just not going to work. So let me start over. I'm going to add that Aweber account. I'm going to generate the code. I'm going to copy and paste this correctly this time. And if you've done everything correctly, you're going to get a success message here with a list of all your accounts. Save and exit, and you can see Aweber has now been added. So that's how you add accounts. Simply go to the accounts tab, click the new accounts button, select your account type, and then follow the steps for authorization. And once an account has been added, you're going to be able to access that account when you create new opt-ins. So like I said, I have Aweber, MailChimp, MadMimi, I have all these accounts enabled. And so when I go over to my opt-ins tab and I create a new opt-in, I'm going to get a list of all these accounts. So if I select MailChimp, well, then I'm going to see my MailChimp account right here, and I'm going to see all the lists that I have in my MailChimp account, and so on. So once you've created an account and authorized it, those lists and those accounts will show up within the opt-in creation process. Okay, finally we have our stats tab. This is where you can see all the stats related to your opt-ins, which is really great. You can see the overall conversion rate for all your opt-ins. You can see how many subscribers you have. You can see the growth rate, how many subscribers you're getting per week. You can take a look at your individual opt-ins and see how well those are doing. Look at the conversion rate of those specific opt-ins. You can get a graph of your sign-up rate, so you can see kind of like the trends of your sign-ups. You can do that by days or months, and you can choose which lists you want to look at. You can get here's a whole list of all my lists. So like I said, I create all those accounts. Here's all the lists I have from all my different accounts, and I can see how many subscribers I have to each list, and also how fast each one of those is growing. Okay, so we've now gone over the 4 different tabs in the Bloom settings panel. The stats tab, which you can use to view the conversion rate and total subscriber count of all your opt-ins, as well as delve into individual opt-in stats and individual list stats. We've gone over the account tab that you can use to add new mailing list accounts, as well as manage the current accounts you have, and even see a list of all the lists associated with those accounts, their subscriber counts, and the growth rate of each list. So here's the Aweber account that I just added, and once you add an account here, you can then apply it to an opt-in. Next we have our import and export tab. Here you can export opt-ins from one website and import them into another website. And finally we have the opt-ins management tab, where you can manage your active and inactive opt-ins, as well as create new opt-in forms. So we've gone through all this long process of explaining all the different settings, and I've created a pop-up, but we never actually got to see that pop-up on our website. So I think we should enjoy the fruits of our labor and take a look at that pop-up. So if you remember, we created a pop-up, we customized the settings, added a nice blue color, added that orange border, and then we move on to the display settings, and we said I want this pop-up to be displayed everywhere, and I want it to be displayed when someone reaches the bottom of a post. So if we visit our home page and scroll down to the bottom of the post, we'll see that pop-up that we created. So let's do that. I'm going to go to our main page and scroll down. And as you can see, that blue and orange pop-up is displayed just like we created it, just like I envisioned it. Okay, so going back to the form, the active opt-ins page, I want to go through that process again and just show you how easy it really is to create these opt-ins once you understand the process. So I'm not going to go through all the settings again. I'm just going to create some new opt-ins and show you how they work. So we have our pop-up. Well, in addition to the pop-up, I want to create a new fly-in opt-in as well. So I'm going to click the new opt-ins button. I'm going to click the fly-in type. I'm going to name it fly-in, and then I'm going to assign a list to it. I'm going to assign that Aweber account and that we just added and choose the list. Moving on, I'm going to choose a template that looks nice to me. I like this template here, looks great, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to preview it, and you know, it looks so good to me. I don't think I needed to change anything. It really looks great, so I'm just going to move on to the display settings. Now here's where we control where the fly-in appears and when it appears. So just like the pop-up, you know, I'm just going to display it on everything, and I'm going to have it pop up at or fly in at the bottom of the post. And I'm going to save and exit. Okay, so now you see that fly-in opt-in has been added. We now have a pop-up and a fly-in that's displaying on all of our pages when someone reaches the bottom of the post. So let's go take a look at that fly-in now. If we scroll down, you can see there's our pop-up and there's our fly-in that we just added. Looks just like the preview. But you know what? You know, I don't think that there's really a point to having a fly-in and a pop-up being triggered at exactly the same time. You know, it's kind of redundant. So I'm going to go back and adjust that a bit. I'm going to adjust these display settings. In fact, I want the pop-up to be displayed on our home page and only our home page, and I want the fly-in to be displayed everywhere else. So I'm going to go into the pop-up here, and I'm going to say display settings, display only on the home page. I don't want it to display anywhere else. I'm going to deselect these and just keep the home page selected and then save. So now we have this pop-up only being displayed on the home page, and the fly-in. You know what? Actually, I want the fly-in just to be displayed on all of our other posts. Like I want all of our blog posts. So I'm going to uncheck everything and just have this be displayed on posts. And if we save and exit, so now we have a pop-up being displayed on our main page and a fly-in being displayed on all of the rest of our posts. So if we go over to the home page, scroll down, we're going to get that pop-up, but we're not going to get the fly-in because we disabled the fly-in on the home page. And if we go over to a post, well, you're gonna see the fly-in because we enabled that on posts, but we're not going to see the pop-up because we disabled that. I think this is a much better system. Like I said, no reason to have those both being displayed at the same time on our whole website. So looking at this post, I think I want to add an opt-in form at the bottom of the post. I think it's a great way to get new subscribers. So I'm going to go back and create a new opt-in form. And I want it to look just like my fly-in. I want to have some design cohesiveness on that post, right? And so I'm going to duplicate this fly-in and just turn it into a below the post opt-in. So I'm going to select the below the post type, which displays, you know, an opt-in box below the post, you know, right above the comments and below the post. And so I'm going to edit this and just call it below post. And that's it. I'm done. There's no reason to adjust any more settings. I like the design, so I'm going to go back to this page and refresh. And you'll see that we now have this box at the bottom of the post, and we have our fly-in as well. And if I were to refresh the page or visit a new post, let's visit a new post, I would see the same thing. I would get this, and I get the pop-up again, or the fly-in again. But you know what? Looking at this, I mean, I think this is pretty aggressive. This might get a little annoying to our readers who are going from post to post. I think I want to keep this below the post opt-in on all the posts, but I only wanted to display this fly-in after someone comments. So I'm going to go back, going to adjust this fly-in and go over to the load-in settings. And I want to take away this trigger at the bottom of the post and say, you know what, just trigger after commenting. So we have that below the post already. No reason to do a fly-in below the post as well. Might be a little aggressive, but if someone's really engaged in comments as well, might as well hit them up with that fly-in as well try to give them that extra, punch and hope they subscribe. So I'm going to trigger after commenting instead. Save and exit. Go back to our post and refresh. So now we have this opt-in form below the post, but that flying is no longer being triggered at the bottom of the post. It's only going to be triggered after someone comments. So if I really like the post and I comment, come back to the page, I get the nice little notification, hey, why don't you subscribe? So that's just an example of creating 3 different opt-ins, having them shown on different pages and to different visitors based on their user interactions. And I think we have a really great system going here. On our main page, we have the big pop-up. Lots of our visitors are coming through the main page, they see that big pop-up, but when they delve into the posts, no need to hit them up with that pop-up over and over again as they explore the site, right? So instead, we just created this below the post opt-in and this fly-in opt-in. So as you can see, there's a lot of great ways that we can combine different opt-in types on a single website. And so that really concludes kind of the basic overview of Bloom. I've gone over how to create an opt-in, how to create an account. I've gone over the different design and display settings within the opt-in creation process. But like I said, this has really been just a basic overview. There's so much more to learn and explore, and there's so many creative ways that you can use these opt-ins, especially in conjunction with each other, as I kind of shown you just now, as you kind of mess with the different display settings and the different triggers. And so I really encourage you, if you have any questions or you want to learn more, go back to our documentation page and check out all the different kind of in-depth tutorials that we have. So I've created an in-depth tutorial just for the different design settings, and where I kind of explore how those design settings can be used effectively to create really beautiful templates, and how the different design settings might be more effective in certain combinations for certain opt-in types. Like certain form orientations I think look better in a pop-up, and other form orientations I think look better in a fly-in. So you can kind of play with those settings, and if you want to learn more, go check out that design settings tutorial. If you want to learn more about the triggers, I touched on each of the triggers, but I didn't really talk about how you can use these effectively in conjunction with each other. And I think that there's a lot that can be done with triggers to really improve your conversion rate. So I encourage you to go to the triggers tutorial and learn more about how to really make those pop-ups and fly-ins incredibly effective. And I also have a tutorial that goes over the account creation process in absolute detail. So I go over every different account type and how to go through the authorization steps to create those accounts and sync them with Bloom. So I encourage you to go check out that tutorial if you're having any kind of problems, syncing your different mailing list software with Bloom. And as always, if you have any questions, be sure to open a ticket in the forum, and we're going to be happy to help you out. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Bloom shortcodes. Now what a shortcode is a little piece of code that you can copy and paste into a post or page right into the WordPress post editor to display a specific opt-in form. This means you have full control over where that form appears within the post. Now, shortcodes only apply to 2 different opt-in types in Bloom, and that is the locked content opt-in and the inline opt-in. Now, whenever you create one of these 2 different types of opt-in forms, you're going to get a shortcode that you can use to display that form anywhere on your website. So here I'm in my opt-in management tab, and you see I have an opt-in that I've created here, a locked content opt-in. And you'll see that this opt-in has a different button here. This is the shortcode button. You'll notice my other opt-ins, a lot of them don't have it. That's because shortcodes only apply to locked content and inline opt-in forms. And so if I were to press this icon here, I'm going to get a pop-up, and it's going to tell me exactly what that shortcode is that I need to use to display that opt-in form on my website. So I would just copy and paste that shortcode into any poster page, and the opt-in form is going to appear. Now, like I said, this only applies to locked content and inline opt-in forms. So if I were to create a new inline opt-in form, I'm going to do that now. I'm not going to go into all the different design settings and stuff. We have different tutorials that go over design settings and account creation. So I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly here. I'm going to name my form. I'm going to select my mailing list account and select the list I'd like to use for this form. Then I'm going to move on to the design options and select my pre-made template. And then I'm going to go over to the design customization settings, and here I can adjust the design. I'm going to preview it here, and you know what, it looks pretty good, so I'm not going to change any settings. I think it looks great the way it is, but you're free to, you know, customize all these settings. And like I said, go check out the design customization tutorial for more about that. I'm just going to focus on the shortcode aspect in this tutorial. So after you've finished designing your inline opt-in, you're going to see a button here at the end called Generate Shortcode, and if you click this, it's going to give you the shortcode that you need to display that opt-in form. So if I were to copy and paste this shortcode into a post, it's going to display the opt-in form that I just created. And unlike, you know, the pop-up opt-in and the below the post opt-in, there's no display settings tab in this opt-in creation process. That's because we're not choosing where to display this opt-in form within the opt-in creation process. Our choice to display the opt-in is our choice to copy and paste that shortcode into a post. So that's where we're actually, you know, controlling where the opt-in appears. It's where we put that shortcode. So like I said, you can copy and paste that shortcode, and once you've copied it, save and exit, and you'll see that the inline opt-in that I created appears here, and just like the locked content, it has a shortcode button that I can click at any time and copy and paste that shortcode into a post. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to head over to our website. I'm going to browse one of our posts here. And I'd like to add this opt-in form on this post right after the quote. So I'm going to edit the post. I'm just going to paste in that shortcode right into the post editor, just like that. And if we update the post, that form I just created is going to appear right where I placed that shortcode. So let's view the post and scroll down. And as you can see, that opt-in form appears. So what's great about the inline and locked content opt-in forms is that you really have full control over exactly where that opt-in form appears, because it generates that shortcode. Now, I've shown you how to copy and paste a shortcode from within the Bloom settings panel, but you can also locate all of your active shortcodes right here using the Bloom shortcode button here in the post editor. So if I were to click this, I'm going to get a list of all the active opt-ins that I can add to my post. And so here's the inline opt-in that we just created, and here's the locked content opt-in that I already had created. So if I were to copy and paste that shortcode, just like that, select it, it's going to add automatically. And if I were to view my post now, well, that other opt-in is going to be added as well. So now we have two different shortcodes added, one for each of the opt-ins that I have active, and we're going to see them both added to our page here. There's the inline opt-in, and there's my locked content opt-in that I just added using that button within the post editor. So going back to my post, no need to have two opt-ins on this page. So I'm going to delete my inline opt-in. So now all we have is that locked content opt-in. And if you look at the locked content opt-in shortcode, it's a little bit different than the inline shortcode. It actually has two parts to it. This first part here and the second part here. And the reason there's two parts is because you can use this shortcode to wrap itself around content that you want to lock. Now, and if you want some more information about exactly how to use the locked content opt-in, we have a whole tutorial for that. I'm just going to go over the shortcode aspect and just show you this shortcode is a little bit different because it has these two parts. So let's just say we have this post, and the post is about this ebook that I just wrote, and I'd like to give a downloadable access to that ebook, but I only want people who subscribe to our list to access it. And so I created this locked content opt-in, and I like to use this locked content opt-in as kind of like a paywall to access that download link. So all I need to do is wrap the download link that I want hidden in between these two pieces of the shortcode. So if I were to say download here, and if I were to link this, to my download link, let's say I had some ebook and it was located here. Well, now when someone views the post, they're not going to get access to that download link until they sign up to our list. So I'm going to update. And then once the page is updated, we'll check out our new opt-in. And if we scroll down, you'll see that the inline opt-in that we had before has been deleted because I deleted that shortcode. And the only shortcode left in our post is that locked content shortcode. It's right here. and it's been wrapped around that download link. So you see that download here, it doesn't show up because they have to opt in first to get the access to that link. So that's how you use the locked content shortcode and the inline shortcode. And so yeah, that's a basic overview of using shortcodes in Bloom. In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to use the importing and exporting feature of Bloom, which allows you to export opt-ins from one website and then import them into another website. So if you've spent a lot of time creating this great opt-in system on one website, designing each of the opt-ins to look perfect just the way you like them, and you don't want to waste the time doing that all over again on your new website, you can simply export them from the old site, import them to the new site. So first thing you're going to want to do is go to your WordPress dashboard and then look for the Bloom tab on the left. Hover over that and then click on the Import and Export link. This will bring you to the Importing and Exporting tab within the Bloom settings panel. And you're going to notice two buttons here, Export and Import. So on the website that you'd like to export the opt-ins from, you're going to log in here and click the Export link. And when you click this, it's going to automatically download a file, a .json file. And you're going to want to then import that file into your other website. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to log into your new website, come back to the same page, and then click the Choose File link and locate that JSON file that we just downloaded. So click Choose File. Look for the file, which is, for me, in my Downloads tab. And you can see I've selected the file here. And once it's been selected, you just click Import. And you're done. The opt-ins that you exported will then be imported, and you can start using them. And that's a basic overview of the importing and exporting feature of Bloom. In this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to use the opt-in design settings that come with Bloom, which can be used to customize the appearance of the opt-in forms you create to better match your website and your brand. And you can do anything from changing the colors to the font to the orientation of elements within the opt-in box, such as the image orientation, the form, and the form field orientation, and so on. So the first thing you're going to want to do to access these design settings is head over to your WordPress dashboard, look for the Bloom tab, and then click the opt-in forms link. And this is going to bring you to your opt-in forms management page, where you can both create new opt-in forms as well as manage the opt-in forms you've created in the past. And for any opt-in form you've created in the past, you can click this settings link, and that'll bring you to the design tab, and you can adjust the design settings for those opt-ins. But in this tutorial, I'm just going to start from the beginning and create a new opt-in form. So I'm going to click the opt-in form, new opt-in form button. And this is going to give me a list of all the different opt-in types that I can create. And what we've done with the Bloom design settings is actually consolidated the settings and made them the same across all the different opt-in types. So no matter what opt-in type you're creating, you're going to see the same design settings. And this makes it really easy to understand the design settings. And also it allows us to duplicate opt-in types from one type to another. So if we were to design a pop-up and then duplicate that pop-up into a fly-in, it's going to work seamlessly. Those design settings will be translated seamlessly, and your fly-in is going to have the same design as your pop-up, which is great. So for the purpose of this tutorial, it doesn't matter which type I create, because those design settings are all going to be the same. And so I'm just going to create a below the post opt-in form. And the first step in any opt-in form creation process is the setup step, where you can name your opt-in and also select your list. So I'm going to name it below the post and select Aweber as my list, and then move on to the design settings. So when you click next, you see next, design your opt-in button. And this is going to bring you to the design settings. And when you're creating a new form, the first step of the design process looks a little different. What we do is we actually let you pick a starting point. So instead of giving you a blank canvas and making you make all these decisions on your own every time, what we've done is we've taken those design settings and made a bunch of decisions ourselves, and create a bunch of pre-made templates out of those decisions. So what you see here is a bunch of starting points, a bunch of pre-made templates, and you can get an idea of what these templates are by looking at the thumbnail here. And so just browse this list and pick a design that looks good to you. And then once you select that design, you'll be able to customize all the different elements. So just think of this as a starting point. And for many people, I mean, these pre-made templates are going to look great. You really don't have to customize them if you don't want to, but if you need extra control, you can customize them, and that's going to be the purpose of this tutorial. I'm going to be showing you how to customize each of these pre-made templates. And so, as you can see on this list of templates, the first couple rows are kind of what we think of as the most basic templates. This is kind of just your light template and your dark template. And as you look at the different rows, you can see kind of there's different formats, even though they're all, you know, kind of the same color. There's other decisions being made here. You might have the image on the left versus the image on the top. You might have the form on the bottom versus form on the right. And you might have a special edge, or you might have a border style. So as you browse here, you can kind of look at these thumbnails and kind of see the differances here. You might have an orange website, and therefore you want an orange pop-up. And so you come down here to the orange row, and then you might, then make your second decision. I want the form on the bottom, or maybe I want the form on the right. And then maybe make your third decision. Well, I want the form on the right, but I also want a nice edge style. Give me that little carrot edge, looks nice. So yeah, that's kind of how we've laid out these pre-made templates. And so just browse through these and select a template that you like. I'm going to select this red one and then move on to the next step, which is the real purpose of this tutorial, which are the design settings, the customization settings for that opt-in form. So select your pre-made template and then move on to the Customize tab. And these are the Bloom design settings. You can adjust your opt-in title and the message. There's various image settings. There's various styling settings for the opt-in box as a whole, such as the background color and the header and body fonts. Then there's also customization settings for the form itself. You can choose where the form appears within the box. You can adjust the text that appears within each form field. And then there's form styling options, such as the colors. There's different edge styles. And you can also adjust the messages that appear within the form. You can add footer text, such as like a disclaimer about your privacy policy, or maybe some reassurance that you're not going to spam your visitors. You can adjust the success message, which appears after someone successfully subscribes to your list. And you can even add custom CSS. So if these settings aren't enough for you, we have a box here where you can really get specific if you're CSS savvy and customize whatever you want. So let's start from the beginning here. Now, when you're designing your form, you can at any time click the preview button to get a preview of what your design looks like. So here's what our form looks like. It's that pre-made template we selected with the red background and the form on the bottom, the image on the top with this gray background color for the form, and this green-blue button. And so we can adjust any of these settings. The first up is the opt-in title. So you can see right now it just says subscribe to our newsletter, but if we want to get more specific, maybe something a little more catching, maybe we have a special offer for this list, we can change that. So I'll change it to subscribe to our newsletter to get access to our free ebook. And you can adjust the message as well. So if we preview this, you can see that my title's been changed, and we can move on. Next up are the image settings, and the image settings allow you to, one, choose where your image appears within the form. So we have different image orientation settings. You can specify the image itself, so you can upload your own image. Now, for these pre-made templates, we've created some really beautiful images that you can use, so feel free to use those, but if you want to add your own, you can. And you can also adjust the load-in animation. So when this form appears, the first time it appears, that image is going to animate in and kind of catch your visitor's eye, and you can choose the style of animation. And finally, you can choose to hide the image on mobile if you like. So if this form, it's getting a little big, maybe you have like a very big description, a very big opt-in title, and that in combination with the image just makes a really tall form, and you want to make sure that on mobile that form is no bigger than the screen itself. Then you can choose to hide the image on mobile, and they'll give you some more room. Okay, so let's go over each of these image settings. The first step is the image orientation, and as you saw in that preview, right now the image is being placed above the text, but you can also place it below, to the right, or to the left of the text. So I'm just going to change it to below text. And like I said, anytime you can click this preview button to get a preview of your design and of your changes. So now the image has been moved below, and we can move it to the left or right as well. And so one thing I like to touch on here is that the type of image you upload might look better with different orientations. So, and you can have control over that image itself. And this image happens to be a very long image. So the width of the image is much more than the height of the image, giving it what we call a landscape orientation. And in general, these landscape images look better when they're placed above and below the text because they have more room to expand horizontally. And so if we were to change this image to right of text, you can see that in doing so, there's much less room for the image to expand horizontally. And because it's a very small image vertically, it gets kind of, the image, gets reduced in size proportionally, and therefore the image itself looks much smaller. So in these cases, in general, an image being placed to the right or left of the text will look better if it's a portrait style image, which means that either, usually the height of the image is actually more than the width of the image. So as you can see, that this area is kind of is more of a rectangle shape, and therefore a rectangular image or even a square image, circular image would look better here. So I'm just going to give you an example that I'm going to upload a new image that's a different orientation. You can see that it's going to look much better here. So I'm going to choose this kind of more square image. You can preview that, and as you can see, the image just fits a lot better here because it's not that landscape style image. So that's one tip for you. Landscape images, generally place them above and below the text. Portrait or square images, place them left or right of the text. It's going to look a lot better. Next up is the load-in animation, so I can change that to, we have various animations here that you can select. By default, it just slides up and fades in, but if you want to get a little more fancy, you can try something else like this flip animation, which looks kind of cool. And you can also hide on mobile, which I already explained. I don't need to preview that. So next up is our opt-in styling. And here you can adjust the background color of the opt-in, the header font, text color, corner style, and you can even add a border to the total opt-in box. So first up is the background color, and this is a good one to touch on first because if you notice this image that I just uploaded, it's kind of this red-orange color, and I'm using this red background color that actually happens to be almost the same exact value as the red in the image, and it just doesn't look very good. In fact, they kind of blend together, and it doesn't look that nice. So this is a perfect opportunity for me to customize the background color of the opt-in form to better match my image, and so that's what I'm going to do. In fact, I'm just going to change it to white, because I think that'll look nice. Now, when you change the background color of your opt-in form, you're also going to want to adjust the text color if you've made a drastic change. So if you notice the text color of my opt-in form is white, if I change the background color to white, the text isn't going to show up. So if I preview this, well, now the image shows up great, but the text doesn't show up because it's white. So I'm going to actually have to change that text color, and we have an option for that here. If you look over here, text color, right now it's set to light. I'm just going to change it to dark so that shows up. So there's another tip for you. You want to adjust that text color based on your background color. So you always, whenever you adjust your background color, you may want to adjust the text color as well. Next up is the corner style, and you can choose between two corner styles, which are squared and rounded. And this is kind of like a common theme in most websites. They might have a square cornered look or a rounded corner look. So depending on what you have going on your website, you might want to adjust this to match. So if we choose rounded corners, you're going to notice these corners become rounded. So it's really up to you. I'm going to change back to square. And next up are our borders. So you can choose to add a border to your opt-in box. You can have that border appear on any corner of the box. So you can have it appear on every corner, all four corners. You can have it appear just on the top, just on the bottom, top and bottom, right and left. So I'm just going to do a full border as an example. And when you select the full border, when you select any border, you're going to get some new options that appear here, which are the border styles and also the border color. And so for the first thing you're going to want to do is adjust your border color. So right now I have a white background and a gray form color, and my image is kind of a red color. So I'm just going to choose a red border for now and see how that looks. And then you're going to want to choose your border style. So there's 5 different styles, which is we have this kind of solid, just kind of standard border. We have a dashed border, a double border, an inlay border, and then the 5th border style is this kind of this classic mail or letter style, this striped look, which is pretty common. It's kind of a fun thing to add to your opt-in form. So I'm going to preview this red border. As you can see, adds that red border there. And like I said, you can either have the full border, or if you just want it on one side, maybe I just want it on the top, I can choose top border like that. That actually looks a lot better. And in this case, based on what this looks like, I'm thinking I want to have a more cohesive style. So I'm actually going to change this to the same color as my button. I'm going to go down to my button. I see that it's this gray or it's green-blue color, and I'm going to change that. And what you can do in these colors, you don't always have to select it. You can actually just type in the hexadecimal value and to any color you like. So right now I just kind of copied and pasted that hex color. And I'm going to preview it. So now I have this nice cohesive look. It's a green-blue border, green-blue button. Looks great with just having the border on the top. So, and then you can adjust, you can change any of these border styles. So like I said, there's also this nice kind of like striped letter look, which is a fun style to add. You can see I really like that. In fact, this red and red look great with the green. I'm going to stick with that style. All right, so that's all the opt-in style settings. Next up is the form setup. Now you can choose your form orientation, which is you can have the form, which is that dark gray part with the email, input and the submit button. You can have that either be on the bottom, on the right, or the left. So right now it's on the bottom, but if I change it to the right, you can see what that looks like. It gets placed on the right here. Or the left. And so when you do this, it's one thing to realize is that in placing the border on the left or right, you've reduced the amount of space you have horizontally, so everything kind of gets squished, it gets pulled in a little bit more, gets squished in a little bit more. So when you choose this form orientation, it's best to do it when you have a short description and short title, as I have here. For example, if this title was twice as long, it would actually end up making this opt-in form pretty tall and might look a little funny with the image being squished on the top there. So again, this is a design decision you should make, and you should make it that decision based on the type of content you're dealing with. So I'm going to put that form back on the bottom. Next up is you can choose to display a name field. So what we've done with the opt-in fields is we've kind of have 2 basic choices. You can collect the email, or you can collect the name and the email of the person signing up. And if you want to get more advanced and collect more stuff, then you can use the custom HTML list type instead of using these automatic forms. And if you want to learn more about that, be sure to look at our account tutorial. So I go over the different account types, and one of those account types is actually to not use an account type and use a custom HTML form. So if you want to learn more about that, head over to the account tutorial. But for now, I'm just going to go over these form setup settings. And so if I choose display name, what's going to happen is instead of just having email and subscribe, it's going to have name and email and subscribe. So you end up having more fields there. And then you can adjust the text that appears here. This is the placeholder text. So if you want to change the language, maybe you can do that, or just for whatever reason you don't want to say name, you want to say something else like input your name or input your email. You can do that here. Next up is the subscribe button text. You can change the text here. Right now it just says subscribe with an exclamation point, but if you want to do something else like, I don't know, join today or something like that, you can adjust that there. And next up is the button color, the button text color. So this is the text color that appears within the button. And much like we can adjust the opt-in text color to light and dark, you can adjust the button color to light and dark as well. And you should change this when considering your button color itself. So if the button color is dark, you can put your text color to light so that text color shows up. And if the button is light, you want to make the text color dark so that the text shows up. So right now our button color is this kind of dark green-blue, and so the light text color actually shows up great. So if this was dark, it might not look as good. And so if we go over to our button and let's say we change this to white and preview that, the button's going to become white, and our text has just disappeared because the text color is also set to white. Well, in this case, much like when we changed our background color to white, we're going to want to change our text color to dark so that it shows up. So the next choice, or the next section here, is the form styling. And here you can adjust the form so that the form is this whole area right here. It has this gray background color. It has the form input fields and the button, the subscribe button. And so you can, the first choice is the form field orientation, and you can have these form fields either be inline in a single row as they are now, or you can have them stacked on top of each other. So if I choose stacked, you're going to see that the button and the input fields become stacked on top of each other. So it's really just a choice you can make stylistically, but also a choice you can make based on maybe where this form is appearing. So let's say this is a fly-in form, and it's sliding up from the bottom right of your page. If you choose to have inline form fields, it's going to make that fly-in much bigger because it has to fit those forms in a single row. Whereas if those forms were stacked on top of each other, the form can be much smaller. So this is one setting that can adjust the actual, it ends up adjusting the size of the opt-in form. So that's another thing to consider when choosing your form field orientation. Next up is the corner style. So you can choose rounded or squared corners. So if I change to squared, then you're going to notice these input fields in the button become squared instead of rounded. Next is the form text color. So you can adjust the text color to light and dark. So if I choose light, it's going to adjust this to light text, and it's going to make the input field dark so that the text shows up. And next is the form background color. So right now I have this dark gray, but if I wanted to change that, so let's think I have this green blue button color. Actually, no, I have the white button color now. So I have this white button color, and I have a red orange image. So maybe I want to change my background color to be similar to that red orange style. So I'm going to go over to this red. I'm going to make kind of a red orange out of it and see how that looks. And you can see this is going to change the background color here. So now I have a red that matches my image, and it shows up great with the white button. It looks really nice. So I'm going to stick with that color. I've already gone over the button color. And so next up is the form edge style. And what this does is this is purely a stylistic choice, and it changes the style of the edge that separates the form from your text and image. So we have this red area, which is the form, and then we have this white area up here, this white background color, which is like the main opt-in box. And so I'm going to look at the preview again. So this edge that separates those two areas, we can kind of add some cool styles to that. So right now it's just a plain edge, but we have some different stylistic choices you can make. So for example, if we go over this zigzag edge, you're going to know it's going to add that zigzag separation. So this is like a way to add some personality to your form. So if you have a more kind of fun and personal kind of brand going on, this zigzag edge is pretty cool. If you want to keep it clean, then either this no edge, standard edge, or maybe this caret edge, which is pretty classic. It's a little arrow that points down, brings the user's eye down to the sign up button. Then we have a curved edge, as you can see here, and we have this kind of triangle edge. So yeah, you can kind of choose between those and figure out which one looks best with your website. Next up is the footer text. So you can add text, and the text will simply appear below the email and join button here. And like I said, you can add something like maybe a link to your privacy policy, or just some text like assuring your visitors that you won't spam them or share their information. A lot of times people that give you their information, they want to know that you're not going to then go share it to a bunch of people. So if you link to your privacy policy and assure them, hey, we don't share your email address, that might reassure them that signing up with you is a good idea. It might increase your conversion rates. Next up is the success message. This appears after someone subscribes. So once they subscribe, they're going to get a little green check mark and a little message that says, you've successfully subscribed. But if you want to change that to a different language or just a different message, you can type that in here. And finally, the custom CSS box where you can add your own CSS. I'm not going to go over that now, but if you do happen to be CSS savvy, quite simply input the CSS here and it's going to be applied to the box. Yeah, and that concludes the design settings tutorial. So yeah, Bloom comes with a lot of design settings. You can really, customize everything. So I encourage you to play with these settings and really create a form that looks great with your website. In this tutorial, I'm going to be going over the Bloom display settings, which adjust where and when your opt-in form appears on your website. So what I mean by where your opt-in form appears, you can select certain pages and posts or certain post types on your website that specific opt-in form will appear. For example, if you're creating a pop-up and that pop-up is connected to a list that is an RSS email list for your blog, and you want that pop-up to only be displayed on your blog posts, well then when you're creating that opt-in form and you go to your display settings, you can select, just make this appear on my posts. I don't want it to appear on my pages. I don't want it to appear on my WooCommerce product pages and so on. I just want it on posts. And you can also create another opt-in form, say for your pages, or that's like a more salesy opt-in form that maybe gives someone a discount off their next purchase and that kind of stuff. So you can create different forms and have them appear on different parts of your website, and you can maybe even have those opt-in forms sign people up to different lists, depending on where they are on your website. So like I said, you might have a certain opt-in form that subscribes to a certain list, which is your your RSS to email blog list, and then you might have a different list, which is your sales funnel, that the purpose of that list isn't to send people blog posts. The purpose of that list might be to send people a big autoresponder that tries to convert them into a sale, might send them deals and so on. So, and you want to tailor that pop-up. You don't want that pop-up that is going to send people an autoresponder to say sign up to our blog RSS. So you'd actually want to create two different opt-in forms that subscribe to two different lists and appear on two different parts of your website. And that's where the display settings come in, because the display settings allow you to either exclude or include different pages or different parts of your website for that specific opt-in form. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do to get into these display settings is to go to your WordPress dashboard, look for the Bloom tab, and go to your opt-in forms. And here's a list of all of your current opt-in forms as well. You also have the ability to create new opt-in forms. So this is the opt-in management tab within the Bloom settings panel. So you can see here all my opt-in forms that I've created in the past. They're all set to inactive at the moment. And so to start off, I'm actually going to create a new opt-in form, so we can just start from the beginning and move through the opt-in creation process. And the display settings is the third part of that process. So I'm going to create a new opt-in. I'm going to select my opt-in type. In this case, I'm going to create a below the post opt-in. So this specific opt-in type only appears below my posts or pages. And I'm going to name the opt-in, so I'm just going to call it below post, and then I'm going to select my form or my account in my list. So let's just say, for sake of argument, that this specific opt-in form, I only want it to appear on my blog. I don't want it to appear, on my contact us page below our contact form. I only want it to appear on our blog posts. And through, Aweber, which is going to be my account type, I've created a specific list. And in my Aweber account, this list is an RSS to email list. So it actually takes my RSS feed and automatically email someone my most recent blog posts as they're created. This is something you can do within your email marketing software, whether you're using MailChimp or Aweber or whatever. In fact, on our own website, we have our own list in MailChimp that is just for our blog. So if someone signs up with the opt-in form on our blog, they're going to get added to this specific list, which, like I said, is an RSS list. And so I'm going to select my Aweber account. Oops. Select my Aweber account, and then I'm going to select my list. So we have 3 lists in our Aweber account. This first list is our blog RSS list, and the second list here is going to be for our autoresponder, our sales pitch. And so this first list is the one I want to put just on our blog. So I'm going to go to next. I'm going to go through the design settings. I'm going to select my template. And I'm not going to go over these settings in detail because we have a different tutorial for that. So if you want to learn more about the design settings, head over to our design settings tutorial. All I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to use the pre-made layout, and I'm going to adjust the title here, since this is for our blog, and this is going to be, for people who are interested in reading our blog and signing up to our blog list in Aweber. I'm going to change the title to "Sign up to our newsletter to get access to our daily blog posts." So this is very clear. When someone's reading the post, they're interested in the post, they see this, opt-in form says sign up to get access to our blog posts, and they get added to the RSS list. So next up is the display settings, and this is what this tutorial is really about. This is where you control where that opt-in form appears on your site. So there's different sections. You can choose the post type. Now WordPress comes with different post types. By default, there's two post types. There's a post and a page. So I'm sure you're familiar with these two different types of posts. Posts are traditionally for your blog, whereas pages might be like an About Us page or a contact page. And we kind of have this idea of two different post types. Now, in addition, your plugins or themes might generate additional post types. So if you're using the Divi theme, we also have a project post type, which is different than a regular post and different than a page. It only appears, in the portfolio module. And if, say, you're using WooCommerce, you might create a product, and a product will be a different post type. That's the product post type. It's not going to appear, in your normal post categories. It's separate. And so this is what we call post types in WordPress. And next we have categories. So if you've selected a certain post type, you can also delve into the specific categories of that post type. So I have I have posts selected, and then I get a list of all of our post categories. So I could actually have this opt-in form appear just in specific categories too. So let's say, for the sake of argument, you have kind of two distinct visitor types coming to your website and two distinct categories. Say you have a website about fashion, and you also have, an area about web design. These are two very different categories, and you might want to tailor your opt-in form for those specific visitors and kind of like have a different headline, maybe even add them to a different list. And you can do that here. So you could actually create two different opt-in forms that appear on two different categories. And you might change the image of that opt-in form to be one to be fashion related, one to be web design related. You might change the header text to be more related to each category. And like I said, you could even subscribe them to different lists and send them different stuff. And finally, we have individual post and page targeting, which is really great. You can even exclude individual posts or include individual posts, and at the same time exclude and include individual pages. So let's say, for example, you have a sales page, and at the bottom of that sales page, let's say you're running a web design company, and you have this sales page, and you want you want to design websites for people, and you want people to contact you to get a quote. Let's say they're reading your sales page. At the very bottom of the sales page, we create a pop-up opt-in form, and you've just copy and pasted a contact form into the custom HTML account type. Well, this is a very specific opt-in that you've created with Bloom, and you don't want it to appear on your whole website. It doesn't make sense for on your blog to get a quote request form pop up. This is an opt-in form you've created for one specific page, and you could potentially only add it to that page using this display on pages section where you actually target a specific page. So this is really great. You can have total control over where these opt-in forms appear, whether it be on an entire post type, whether it be on an entire category, or whether it be just on a specific post or just on a specific page, or on an entire post type except for the specific post or specific page. So that's kind of a basic overview of all the different display settings. And so, like I said, in this case, I'm creating an opt-in form for my blog. I want it to appear on all my blog posts, and so I'm just going to select posts. I'm going to select all my categories. I don't need to, exclude any posts, and so I'm all done. I'm going to save and exit. As you can see, I have a new opt-in form here called Below Post, and we've chosen to only display it on posts, not pages. So if we go to our home page here, we're going to notice that there aren't any opt-in forms here because this is a page, it's not a post, it's not our blog. We don't want this opt-in form appearing here, and we've chosen to not have it appear here. So, but if we go over to a blog and we click on any of our blog posts and scroll down, you're going to see the opt-in form appears. So this is an example of these display settings in action. We've targeted a specific part of our website, and we've based that targeting off the post type of posts versus pages. Now, let's say, like I was saying earlier, what if I, for whatever reason, I only want that I don't want that opt-in form to appear on a specific post. Maybe let's say it's just a very important post. Maybe you just don't want to clutter it for whatever reason. You just don't want the opt-in form there. I don't know. You might make the decision for whatever reason. Or like I said, maybe you've made a separate opt-in form just for that post, and you don't want two opt-in forms to be displayed. So let's say you have this very popular post, right? And the reason it's so popular is because this post you've created is actually a free resource post. You've created, this free ebook. You've created this free resource, or whatever it is, and lots of people are coming in through Google, coming into that post. And in fact, it's the most popular part of your website, and it's generating almost all of your traffic. Well, maybe for that specific post, you want to create a very specific opt-in form that is very, very tailored to that specific resource, which is, driving these very specific visitors interested in a very specific thing. And so if you change that opt-in form to say, hey, sign up to our blog and get access to all of our future free resources, that might be much more compelling than, hey, subscribe to our newsletter. They aren't necessarily interested in your blog because they don't know about your blog. They're interested in that free resource, and they'd probably be interested in more free resources. So that's an example of when you might create a specific opt-in for a specific post. And in that case, I would want to actually exclude this other opt-in form, which is kind of this like blanket opt-in form. It's on every single post. I'd want to exclude it from that post so we don't have two opt-in forms. We don't need two opt-in forms on a single post. So let's just create that really quick, and I'll show you an example of that. So here I have this post. It says, don't miss this fashion show. It's just a random post I've created, on our blog. And I want to create a specific opt-in form for this specific post. So I'm going to go back. I'm just going to duplicate this one. I'm going to create another below the post opt-in form. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to call it below post 2. Head over to the design settings. And I'm going to change the design of this just to show you. Let's say I want to make it blue. And I want to change this title to something else. So I'm going to say, so sign up to our newsletter to get access to tons of free resources. So I've created this new opt-in form, and I want it to only be displayed on that one post. So I'm going to uncheck posts. I'm going to have it by default not being displayed on anything, and then I'm going to target one specific post, which is this one. Don't miss the fashion show. I only want it to display there. So there's an example. You can even search in here. So if you want to say, like, as you type in, it'll recognize what you're typing, and you can say if you have a lot of posts, if you know the name of the post, you can just type it in there. It's going to show up. So here's an example of me targeting one specific post for this one specific opt-in form. I'm going to save and exit. So now I have two opt-in forms. One's being displayed everywhere, and one's being displayed on one post. And so if I go back to our post here and I click on Don't Miss the Fashion Show, you're going to see that, well, now I have two opt-in forms here. That's not what we want. So what I want to come in and do is actually, for this first opt-in form, I want to exclude it from this post. So I'm going to go back and go here, go back to our display settings, and then go over to the do not display on these posts and do the same thing. Don't miss the fashion show. So now I'm excluding this opt-in form from that post. And if we come back here and refresh, you're going to see that initial opt-in form is gone. And so now we have this blog where one opt-in form is being displayed everywhere. So you go here, that first opt-in form, no matter what post we go to, we always have this general, hey, subscribe to our blog. But for this specific post, and for whatever reason, I wanted to adjust the opt-in form. And so I created a specific opt-in form for that post. I adjusted, the title and the colors. And I think, for whatever reason, this opt-in form is going to convert better. It's a very important post to me. I want to, make sure that everything's converting as well as possible on this post. And so I've created a specific opt-in form for this post. and then I've excluded that general opt-in form from this post. So there's an example of how you can use both these post type level targeting as well as the individual post and page targeting and exclusions, so you have full control over where these opt-in forms appear. So going back, just to touch on how we can use these other display settings. So like I said, you can also choose not to display on certain categories, and you can also choose to display on certain post types. So right now I've chosen to display on posts but not pages. So what if I want to create a new opt-in form for our pages? I'm going to go back. I'm going to create a new opt-in form, and this time I want to create a pop-up. So I'm going to click the pop-up opt-in type. I'm going to name this pop-up, and for this one, I want this pop-up to be our sales pop-up. The purpose of this pop-up is to get our potential customers to sign up, and then I'm going to send them an autoresponder that I've created in Aweber, and it's going to end with some salesy emails, some deals, and that kind of stuff. So this is separate from our blog list that we created. So I've created these two opt-in forms earlier just for our blog, and they only appear on the blog. And now I'm going to create a new opt-in form that appears on our pages, and all of our pages happens to be tailored to our customers and not other random visitors. So I want to choose Aweber, and I'm going to choose my second list here, which is our sales list. I'm going to design the opt-in form and go next, and this one I'm going to say join our newsletter to get 10% off. So this is, like I said, very tailored to our customers. It's going to get our potential customers to sign up, and then once we have their email address, I have this nice autoresponder set up in Aweber that sends them, resources related to, our product offering. It might send them, testimonials, and then finally it's going to send them 10% off the purchase. And hopefully, with this autoresponder, we've got ourselves a new customer. So moving on to the display settings. Now this time I create a pop-up, which means we have some new settings within the display tab to go over. And these are called the load-in settings. And this gives you a whole nother layer of control over not where your pop-up displays, but when it's displayed based on certain user interactions. And so I'm not going to get into these right now. I'm just going to first finish creating this based on our location settings. Then I'm going to come back and talk about how these load-in settings can give you so much more control and so much more a new layer of targeting that can actually increase your conversion rates a lot, because you can target specific user interactions. Okay. And so, like I said, this opt-in form, I don't want to display it on posts. I just want to display it on pages. And so this is gonna be displayed in our home page, our sales page, and whatever pages we've created. And yeah, I don't need to exclude anything because it's only being displayed on pages. I'm going to save. So now we have 3 opt-in forms, 2 below the post opt-ins for our posts, and 1 pop-up that gets displayed on our pages. And so if I head over to our home page now, we're going to get this pop-up. And there you see, so there's this pop-up I just created. And like I said, this is only on our pages. So if you go over to our blogs, this isn't going to show up. It's not going to show up on our blog. On our blog, all we have is this pop-up we created earlier, which is specifically targeted to posts. Okay, so that shows you how to use these display settings as far as targeting specific areas of your website. And now I'm going to get into the load-in settings and the triggers. And I'm just going to go over these briefly and talk about how they work. And so I'm going to go back to our pop-up and go over to the display settings. Now, these load-in settings are really cool, and you can use them in so many creative ways. And because of that, I've actually created a whole other tutorial that talks about triggers. And I'm going to go over these triggers now, but if you want more information about kind of like how to use these triggers creatively, then be sure to check out our triggers tutorial, which goes into more detail, and it goes into some things that I've used on our own website and that I found to be successful, and so on. So, but these are part of the display settings, so I'm going to go over them now. And like I said, these load-in settings only apply to the pop-up and the fly-in box. These are things, because these are things that load in. They load into the page, on top of the page. And so there's kind of this the step that happens before they appear, whereas like the below the post opt-in form is always there. These appear, and they appear based on what we call a trigger, and you can customize these triggers. So first up is the intro animation. This affects how, the animation that applies to the pop-up or the fly-in when it appears. So by default, it just fades in, but you can also have it flip in or whatever. We have a bunch of fun animations you can choose. If you want to get something a little more crazy, you can try the flip animation, which is cool, and it might catch your visitor's eye a little bit more. And after you select your intro animation, you can start playing with your triggers. Okay, so the first trigger, and one of the most basic triggers, is to trigger after a time delay, which means when someone lands on your website, that pop-up is going to trigger after the system counts down from a specific amount of seconds. So right now it's set to 20 seconds. So if in this example, if someone landed on your page and they were there reading the page for 20 seconds, once they've been there for 20 seconds, the pop-up is going to load in. So that's how the trigger after time delay works. And so just an example, I'll set this to just 3 seconds and save, and then I'm going to come back to our homepage here and refresh. And if you just wait for a few seconds, that pop-up is going to appear. So yeah, after 3 seconds, it showed up automatically. So yeah, 3 seconds is a little fast. So you can play with that. You don't want to make a pop-up until the visitor is sufficiently engaged in your website. So 20 seconds is pretty good, but yeah, you can adjust that depending on whatever works for you. So I'm going to change this back. I'm going to disable this for now and then move on to the next one, which is trigger after inactivity. And how this works is just like similar to the time delay. When you enable this, you can adjust an idle timeout, which is how long the visitor has to be idle before it pops up. So this only applies to inactivity. So if the user becomes inactive and they've kind of like lost interest in your page for whatever reason, maybe they opened up a new tab, maybe they've, someone rang the doorbell and they left and they forgot about it and they came back and they're about to, close their browser. Well, when they come back, they're going to be greeted with an Optin pop-up, and hopefully, that re-engages them and maybe you get a sign up out of it. So that's how that works. Next is the trigger at the bottom of the post. So this is my favorite probably load-in setting because it generally works well no matter what, because it only applies to people who have reached the bottom of your post. And what that means is if they've reached the bottom of the post, they have been sufficiently engaged in your post and they've read the entire post. And so therefore they're interested in your website and they're more likely than the average visitor to subscribe. So you're already kind of targeting someone who's interested in your website. And secondly, you're only targeting them when they've finished reading, so you're not upsetting their reading experience. So it's a great way to target your best visitors and also not upset them. So some people get annoyed by pop-ups. We all know this, but they are very effective. And I think if you're not using them, you're really putting yourself at a big disadvantage. So this is a great way to use the pop-up, but to kind of feel good about the fact that you're not upsetting your visitors. So I generally would have this always enabled for pop-ups. Next is the trigger after commenting. And this is similar to targeting at the bottom of the post, but it adds like an additional layer of targeting. This will only show up after someone comments on your page. So which is cool because this person is not only interested in your post, they're completely engaged in it. They've taken part in the post and commented. And so that visitor is very likely to be, a candidate for a subscriber. Like they're definitely very interested in your website. And so you might want to have, a specific pop-up that you create just for this user interaction. You might have you might create a new pop-up that says, hey, thanks for commenting. We love your commentary and we hope that you, come back and read our future posts and comment again. You might create some specific pop-up for that only gets displayed after someone comments. They might, feel, personally engaged by that. Whenever you can engage someone personally and kind of play off their interactions, it's gonna be a much higher converting pop-up. So like I said, you can create some pop-up that says, hey, thanks for commenting. Please subscribe and come back and comment in the future. And it's a great way to use that trigger. So like I said, if you have this enabled, it's only gonna show up after commenting. So just an example, let me show you how that works. I'm gonna save and exit. I'm going to actually first of all, I have to enable this on posts. So we come back. I'm going to enable this on posts. We have the display at bottom of the post enabled, and we have display after commenting enabled. So if I come to this, if I come to any of these posts and I scroll down to the bottom of the post, it's going to be displayed. And also if I comment, it's going to be displayed as well. So that's how those two triggers work. And like I said, you don't have to have them both enabled. In fact, you can create two different pop-ups, each of which get triggered on each of those two different interactions. Next is trigger after scrolling, and this is similar to trigger at the bottom of the post, except this one triggers based on when they hit a certain percentage down the page. So in this case, let's say you're not targeting a blog post. So what's great about blog posts and the trigger at the bottom of the post interaction is that there's usually this kind of like this area of comments at the bottom of the post. They scroll down, they scroll past the post and reach the comments, and that's when the pop-up triggers. But if you have a regular page, the bottom of the page is the end usually, right? So there's nowhere else to scroll, and so they'll kind of hit the bottom, and they'll get the pop-up. But let's say you wanted to have that pop-up trigger not at the very, very bottom, but maybe just like right before the bottom, maybe 80% down the page, 50% down the page. This just gives you that control, and you can make that decision yourself. I mean, you might have this like really, really long sales page, right, that people are going through, and there might be some specific point down the page where you think, this is the optimum time to have this opt-in form appear, and you can therefore have full control over that. So that's how that applies. Next is the trigger after purchasing. And this is another really cool one that's kind of similar to trigger after commenting, but this applies to when someone purchases a product through WooCommerce. And right now, we just support WooCommerce, but we might be adding more support in the future. So you can check the documentation down below, and also the documentation in our triggers tutorial to see about what e-commerce systems we support. But at launch, we just created support for WooCommerce. And so what this does is when someone purchases a product and they reach the thank you page, they get this pop-up that appears, and it could be a special offer. It could be, let's say they get a pop-up that says, hey, get 10% off your next purchase, sign up to our newsletter. That's an incredibly targeted pop-up. It's going to be very effective, but it's only going to be very effective to someone who just purchases a product, right? Saying you get 10% off your next purchase doesn't make any sense for someone who's never purchased a product, right? And so it's great. These people who have just purchased something from you they've already become your customer. They're already super engaged. They love your brand. They love your product. They're very likely to subscribe, and they're even more likely to subscribe if you tailor the offer to them, such as giving them a discount. So, like I said, if you're using MailChimp or any of these marketing softwares, if you create a specific list, you can usually create a specific welcome email. So if you create a specific list, which is your product follow-up list or something, and you create this pop-up, and you have this specific pop-up signing up to this specific list that only triggers after someone purchases, and the welcome email happens to be, a welcome email with a discount code, then you can say, hey, sign up to our list, get 10% off. You're just targeting that specific user interaction, that specific user, and giving them a specific offer. You're going to see a much higher conversion rate with that. Okay, so those are all the different triggers. I've gone over those in sufficient detail, and if you want even more detail, check out our triggers tutorial. And so the next two settings, which will complete this tutorial, our next two design settings, are the display once per session and the hide on mobile. And these only apply to pop-ups and fly-ins. And what this does is, if you enable display once per session, that pop-up is only going to display once per session duration that you define. So this is something I'd recommend for most pop-ups, right? So you don't want someone visiting your blog and reading each post to keep getting the same pop-up every time they go to a new page, right? It's going to get pretty annoying. So if you've created a pop-up that is displaying on a lot of posts, you probably want to have this enabled. And what this will do is that pop-up, once it's closed, it won't come back again until their session duration is over, which you define here. So let's say you only want that pop-up to be displayed once per week. You can enable this and say session duration 7 days. And finally, we have hide on mobile. If this is enabled, then the pop-up will not be displayed on mobile. If you're creating a fly-in, same thing, the fly-in will not be displayed on mobile. And the reason we have this is because let's say you have a pop-up and a fly-in on the same page. That might look okay on desktop because there's sufficient space for both of those opt-in forms to live. But on mobile, everything gets reduced in size, and what's going to happen is that pop-up and the fly-in is just going to sit on top of each other, and it's kind of unnecessary duplication. You're going to close the pop-up, and then you're going to see the fly-in. You have to close that too. It's there's no point in having both. So if you have a pop-up and a fly-in, you're going to want to disable one of those on mobile. Yep, and that concludes our display settings tutorial. And so I've gone over how to use the display settings to target specific opt-ins to specific post types as well as specific categories, and how to exclude certain posts and certain pages as well as target certain posts and certain pages. And then I've talked about how to use triggers, just not to add a different layer of targeting, which is the user interaction targeting. And so yeah, I encourage you to play with these settings and really create different offers that apply to different parts of your website. And I think if you do that, you're going to see a really big increase in conversion rates.